right. As per usual, let's go ahead and do a mic check. In fact, I'm just going to unplug and replug in. How about now?
It's
Can you
working
guys
now.
hear me? Can you hear me, Keen?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Excellent. I can hear you. S can hear you. I can hear S. I'm laughing. You're laughing. The guy outside in the window's laughing. Everyone's having a great time. Yeah, Keen's voice is low. They're saying that too.
Damn.
Um, I might try to let me see if I can't pump you up real quick, and then we'll get right into it. Because I might have, well, no, even my output volume is as high as it goes in Discord, and yeah, guys, I don't think I'm gonna be able to pump up Keen any more than he already is.
Is it any better now?
It sounds a little bit better, but I did kind of pump it up in my own headset. So, what do I have on my right cheek? What is that? Is it a zit? It might just be a blemish. Escalade. Thanks for asking. Anyway, so we are here in Too Cool for School is what I decided to call this segment because everything needs a name. And what we are going to be talking about today is the first week of StarCraft Underground League SCUL. So far, so leading up to it, there was a lot of hype. We had the draft night. A ton of people showed up. It was a lot of fun. Going into the first week, we are only, 3 days in the actual league, and there has already been so much discussion, so many voices coming out of the woodwork about things that have been going poorly, things that have been going well. But in a first season for anything like this, with a guy that's hosting it that knows absolutely nothing about what he's doing, there's going to be some friction. And there's still tons of matches to be played. You're absolutely correct, Flash. But I want to get back to some of the commentary, right? The community has had varying levels of being vocal, right? There's been a lot of really good feedback, a lot of opportunities for discussion, and a lot of different uh, opinions that have been coming out of the community, as you can see here, right? Pandora, I'd be very upset about this format if I could read. Okay, we have some people being very sympathetic. After long stretches of criticism, we've got Quail. Sorry, man, Shark, if you're reading this, realizing that I'm in the room, but it's not all bad, and some voices have been a little bit more vocal than others. It's not everyone that has really been kind of blowing up the Discord, hitting me up in DMs all over the SCUL channel and other servers. It's not everyone. Some people have been more vocal than others. But with that being said, it's not all bad either. Right? We're going into this and we are learning as we go. And there's been some really positive feedback too, and it keeps me going. It keeps me going. Um, so that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the bad, the good, and what we can expect as we continue through the format in its current construction. So I want to kick it off, and I want to start about what's bad first. Let's get the bad news out there. And Keen, I kind of want to ask your opinions of what has gone on so far from draft to this point that you think the community might be struggling with, or as a player in the league that you think could definitely use some improvement.
So far from what I've seen, I mean, I haven't seen, I guess, the discussion from what people were saying on my team server. I guess there's been a lot of um, negative discussion in the UPL server, which I'm not on because I guess they gatekeep according to low MMR actually. So I wouldn't be privy to these
You're too
discussions
good
anyway.
for it.
Um,
Yeah.
I, I'm yeah, and I'm not
Ooh,
really that
thanks,
great,
Flash.
honestly, either. So, but anyway, uh, I feel like most of the negative attitudes that I've seen were there were like precursors to this even before school. So it's like most of it is lower level players being mad about getting matched up with higher level players is what I have been seeing. I don't think any of this. The worst case scenario this week was Aaron versus Doodle, and I know Aaron. I know for a fact that he did not care about that and just tried to four pool Doodle or something and did his best.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, like I've already made my opinion on that in particular known on the SCU server, which is just that um, I think it's kind of silly for players choosing to play StarCraft of all games, one of the hardest and most competitive games of all time, to complain about the fact that they're being thrown to the wolves. And it's like sometimes that's just going to happen. It's unavoidable in StarCraft. You can't always have balanced matchups. So I don't know how much of the negative comments are regarding other aspects. I saw some of what Manshark posted there just now, complaining about the 75% bid rule, which I personally thought was kind of interesting. And if it wasn't for that, I think it would have just evolved into players like bidding like an insane amount for the highest level. Fun without it. That's just my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, there's good opinions, and I think the two things I want to touch on that you brought up that I think are really important is the draft, right? That I want to hit, and I'm also trying to mess with the volume. Chad's still saying that you're coming in a little bit low. I have everything cranked up. I don't know how to crank anything up anymore, so we may just have to deal with it for now. But whoops, got rid of you. The first thing I want to mention is the draft, right? So the 75% rule, it was a fun experiment. I think after the experience of doing the 75% draft, we're not going to do it moving forward. Moving forward, we are going to start implementing uh, like patch notes almost to the league, right? Like little adjustments, little changes as the league matures, as it evolves to what it's meant to be. And I think one of those things is going to be a change in the draft. So the 75% rule will go away. It was not very well received. Um, but with that being said, I feel like the teams still ended up being pretty balanced. And I want to get back to that in a little bit. You also mentioned the players being paired up against people outside their skill range, and I kind of want to show it on the big cam. So, wrong big cam. Dude, I am the worst freaking streamer ever. Okay, so if we look here, right, you can see week one. Let me go ahead and zoom out just a tad so everyone can see the entirety of week one. So if we look here at week one, we have the teams up here and what we've seen so far this week, right? Not exactly spoilers. I mean, maybe a little bit. We'll cast some of them, but I think it's more important to discuss what has not been going well. And the match that you're talking about right now is Aaron versus Doodle. Now, there's a fine balance that I'm trying to accomplish here with this league. One being that it's as competitive as can be, right? The best players from the community come to this league to duke it out and have a legacy team, but also have depth matter, right? And so having a larger roster, more matches to play, but not necessarily being paired up against the Wolves. But with that being said, it's strategic. But I think the biggest problem about it is player retention, right? If Doodle is playing people that are significantly lower skilled week after week after week, he's not going to want to keep showing up, maybe, unless he's a bully, right? And then people that are getting thrown to wolves week after week after week, that's not necessarily very fun. So it's an interesting thing. And I know this is one example, and it was something I was keeping my eyes out, but I was curious if there was any other examples that you can think of, or looking at the rosters now and the first 20 games that are templated or have already occurred. Like what are you seeing? Is there any other kind of imbalances, any issues, any suggestions to kind of get around this problem?
Yeah, so I just put my mic a little closer to my mouth. I don't know if it's any better, but I I honestly, I mean, so I think our team in particular had some imbalanced matchups, more imbalanced than the other one because I think Mick Tarrant was just really on point with his draft, and some of the players that he got that outclass other teams, like mid-range players, he got for pretty reasonable, um, pretty reasonable like points or bets or whatever. Um, I actually, even considering that, like, I think the only one that's crazy imbalanced on our lineup in particular is Doodle versus Aaron, and then there's Static versus Anderson. And Static was like an unknown quantity for everyone too. We only
Right.
found out that he was actually A rank in the early season, no less, which was pretty impressive. After the fact, so that was he was just a complete unknown quantity. The other team, I feel like it's actually a lot closer, and um, I feel like most of the matchups are pretty good. I looked up 9K and because I'm facing him in one of the SCU tourneys this week, and I think he's like 1300, and I think Shafir is like 1600 ish. So like that one is kind of a little imbalanced, but it's not like crazy unwinnable or something. Like same with Yakub versus Navane. Um, I feel like a lot of these are actually pretty even, and I wouldn't be surprised if it came down to the wire and it ended up being like 6-4 win or something.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what the scores shake out to be. I mean, looking at this matchup in particular, right? The Team Legion versus Team Unhinged, they came out the gate very strong. I think it was sitting at 6-0. And something interesting about them as well is that every single match has been 2-0, right? And so I'm tracking that data. I'm trying to keep an eye on it. But it's only the first week, right? We got to give this some time to shake out and the strategies to form and
Mhm.
people to train. But I'm wanting to see kind of how imbalances show up and where people get sacrificed. Okay, so we kind of talked that a little bit. I kind of agree with you. Like right now, I don't think it is too bad of a problem, and just a little bit where it's going to happen here and there. But I think as we continue through these weeks and players and teams start recognizing how to throw their players into these lineups every week, that we should see it leveling out a little bit. One thing I also want to note that we corrected early on that was seen as an issue was the first map, right? So when we first kicked this off, the idea was that we wanted seeding to matter, we wanted every match to matter, and for teams to be rewarded in ways for that. Now, the problem with week one was that we used coin flips to decide who was the higher seed. Now, in the original template, the higher seed did not have to put a player first in the snake kind of populating of the matchups, and then they also every one of their players were to get the first map pick, and it became very apparent early on that having every single player on one team get the first map pick. Especially off of a coin flip, was a little bit too much of an advantage. So, after about 3 matches had been played, we decided to make the change that the first map would be predetermined for every single one of these weeks. And so that's going to be something that we're going to keep moving forward. The map will be predetermined, but the seeding will still justify uh, or at least provide an advantage when it comes to player selection with the other teams. Okay, cool, cool. So we have the draft that we talked about. We talked a little bit about uh, the lineups and some of the issues that may arise that we're going to keep eyes on with that. What else do we need to talk about? Let me see my notes. We have the format and pairings, the draft. How about the teams? So you mentioned earlier mixed team was looking pretty strong. And I want to be clear that with teams, perfect balance isn't the goal. When it comes to SCUL, it's a long-term marathon, right? And so through the systems that are in place, through strategy, through using the economy, through training players, the intent is that over time that there's no single team that is dominant for more than 2 or 3 seasons, right? That's kind of like the cutoff. If there's a team that's just slapping everyone around for 2 seasons back to back, 3 seasons back to back, that is an indicator of a problem. Do you think we're already at that with mixed team, or what are your thoughts?
Um, uh, so I don't know. I'm very happy that I'm on this team. I'm not going to lie, but I think it's gonna. I think we're gonna have to wait and see because like our draft this week, for example, Doodle being against Aaron is actually a big loss for us. Even though Doodle won, I still consider it a loss in drafting because this is like when Chaos got that draft, they must have been so excited, right? Because it's like fine, we got all our best players matched up already. now we just throw poor Aaron to Doodle, um, and essentially nullify our best pick. I mean, no offense to the other team, but I think Doodle would have 2-0'd anyone on their team. So
Right.
um, that's what makes the snake draft interesting. I will say also before I forget, the first map pick is a great choice because yeah, I think it's a huge advantage to be able to have like an entire team of players be able to pick their first map. um, but yeah, like I think we're gonna just have to see how it shakes out over the next few weeks. Because just because we do have maybe like the most depth on our lineup, we can still lose matches simply because we don't draft correctly.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the snake draft makes it interesting.
No, I agree. And I don't want it to be easy, right? I don't want it to be easy to think about. I don't want it to be easy to plan. I want it to be rewarding the players who know that they might be able to hit above their weight class in certain aspects, right? Like we've got plenty of players that are, ZVT snipers, right? Like their Zerg versus Terran is amazing, but their Zerg versus Protoss sucks, right? Like that's where those players can be valuable. That's where they can shine, and that's where they can be used in these lineups to get those precious map wins. And bringing to your point, nullifying the best player with not your best player is strategy. Now we talked about the potential risk when it comes to player retention, player satisfaction, but the thing is and the tough aspect of what we're trying to do here is that we are turning a 1v1 game into a team sport, which is really tough, right? Like without making it 2v2, 3v3, where you have teams actually participating at the same time, we're trying to turn a bunch of 1v1s into a strategic format where a team matters. And this is one way of doing it. Now, you mentioned the nullification and how it kind of felt good as chaos, right? Like, okay, cool. Like they lost their 2-0 that would have been against anybody, right? And now they're getting these 2-1s all over the place, right? Like, what if Doodle was up against Killa Ace, 2-0'd him, and let's just hypothetically say Grast was instead facing Aaron and 2-0'd Aaron, right? Now all of a sudden,
Mhm.
that looks a lot better for Team Savage, and that's exactly what we're going for. And where an example of this pops out, and it happened just today, was Wolfix 2-0ing Tom, because Tom is one of those players that might have 2-0'd SCUL, right? Like SCUL
Sure,
2-0ing
yeah.
Ed, Ed, and Eddie. So using these players and putting them against where they're going to get the most map wins is really interesting to see play out in this first week.
Yeah, and I think the fact that we already have 2-2-1s in our bracket, but the other team doesn't have any, is like a testament to the fact that like even though I think our team is pretty deep, I feel like for the most part Chaos did a pretty good job on their draft, and they put pretty even matches against each other. Like me versus Erob, for example, I feel confident against Erob, but um, it's by no means like a foregone conclusion. I could definitely lose to him. And like Ozzy versus Radley, I have no idea how that matchup is going to go, honestly. I remember Ozzy telling me he was confident against him, but I mean, Radley is pretty good and he's like a TVT specialist. So
Yeah,
who knows? And if he 2-0'd Ozzy, that would be huge because Ozzy is one of our best players.
I know. It's so exciting. And like when I'm sitting here nerding out over it, it's pretty fun how deep it is. Now, with that being said, and talking about the draft and something that's not depicted here, we were talking about depth, and it's kind of variable across the board. The 75% draft kind of did an interesting job of kind of skewing where the players ended up and added variability in placement. But something that has come up as a little bit of a complaint, and I'm curious about your thoughts on it, knowing that this is a competitive league meant to last a long time, we don't want sacrifices to be too much of a thing, but there's only 10 players per team being utilized right now out of rosters of 22. Is that a problem in your eyes? Do you think that we should increase the number of players being utilized each week or no?
Yeah, so this is something that I was thinking about actually, and I'm not really like off the top of my head, I'm not sure how to solve it because it's a double-edged sword. Like if you increase the matchups, um, it's going to be hard to just fill out enough players every week because people will just have busy lives. They're not going to be 15 players out of 22. It's pretty unlikely that you're going to be able to get everyone to fill that out every week. Um, and then on the flip side, it's like I know I don't remember the exact rule, but I know you did put in some incentives for people to field new players every time, or at least like once in a
Correct. Yeah.
while. Like,
If we look at the
yeah, so
prestige thing here, and I can try to maybe move this because I can't seem to add it. The thing is prestige. It'll be a SCU inject at the end of the season. So if you
uh,
for every roster unique player you field during the season, you get 0.25 prestige. Now, one prestige only equals like 5 SCU, right? So it's a light incentive. And then if you utilize 100% of your roster, you get an additional prestige for your team, which will be another 5, right? So there is some very light incentives to field as many as you can.
yeah, it's hard to see how that'll pan out in the long term and how those levers might need to be switched. But right now, I'm thinking it feels like, at least if I was the one who was making the drafts, I would probably want to just put in my best players possible every week and leave out the lesser ones unless it's like we have a strong feeling, or we're against a team where they have a very, like, they really lack depth, and then we could throw in some newer players, or lesser skilled players.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't actually know what McTarren's perspective on this is, right? But that's how I would do it if I was captain.
Well, I think that's kind of across the board with captains. And something that has been suggested is some sort of event or bracket or something outside each week that doesn't necessarily count towards SCU points. Maybe it does. Maybe you get SCU bucks or prestige or whatever the case is for those that were not selected for that week of play. And I was thinking about it, and what kind of organically formed, there was a few things. One, I know one team has an internal bracket that they're doing, one for practice, one to get people playing that aren't selected for the week, but also to gain stats on the players of their own team to recognize kind of, their skill ranking internal. I also know a
That's
couple
awesome.
other. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm gonna get to it when we get to the good things here in a second too. Like, there's been a lot of really cool aspects that have come from this league. But there's also teams. I know Legion did this. I know Manadog. I don't remember who he scheduled with, whether it was unhinged or if it was just blasted out to all the teams. But there was off week scrimmages, and they didn't call it scrimmages, but they were utilizing players that were not thrown into the matchups for that week to get games against each other, so that they were participating. And when I was thinking about it, I don't necessarily, like, my gut instinct is not to formalize something for that. I feel like in normal sports leagues, in esports especially, scrims is a very important concept. It lets you know where you're at, what you need to work on, what the opponents are strong at. And if you're utilizing your players and every week between teams you establish scrimmages, that's completely on the team, in my opinion. I don't necessarily think administration needs to implement that for you, and it can be a tool that can be used regardless. So that was kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I just think so many of these problems that we've talked about so far, including this one, obviously, they're kind of just inherent in StarCraft, especially now that it's so old. Um, there's just a huge gulf of skill at every level, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, even in CPL, even in CPL, where they have their own internal MMR system and they have like 3 weeks of pre-league matches to try to tinker with that. I mean, there's still like wildly lopsided matchups. It's just impossible to get away from. But I do think this is one of the things that I was most interested with this league, is the seeing how teams grow over time aspect, and people can get better, especially the lower players, because the higher level you get in StarCraft, the harder it is to actually keep improving.
Yeah.
So when there's these guys that are like DC rank and so on, if they keep practicing with this like core group of teammates and friends over 2 or 3 seasons and then become more valuable than they were at the start, that's going to be a huge asset for these teams, right? And like, so I'm not trying to throw my own team under the bus here or anything, but like we have definitely not. We were we were active, relatively active on our voice chat, playing games and stuff with each other over the weekend. As far as I can tell, I woke up in the middle of the night a couple nights ago because there was this crazy thunderstorm in my area, and I saw there was some of the Aussies on our team in voice chat at like 3 a.m. my time playing. But like
Yeah.
for the most part, it's been kind of dead for during the weekday so far. So, and yeah, maybe I'll try to step up and organize some event on the weekends for team practice. But like we've been a little on the down low for that. Uh, I guess so far. So like the fact that other teams are running an internal ladder essentially already is pretty cool. Good for them. Um, yeah, I think I would like to see like differences in team culture and differences in team activity levels um, really impact the league over time. And it's not, it's just not something you're going to see immediately,
Yeah,
which
it's going
sucks.
to take
But
some time. And yeah, I think that that's a draw for a lot of players. It's been I want to transition to what's the good, right? So if we could recap on what's the bad, the corrections we've made, right? The first map pick, we're keeping an eye on sacrificial lambs, but also acknowledging that it's just a part of the system. It's a part of the strategy. We don't want it to get out of control, right? But we do want to make sure that like it's still a tool available to teams. Participation, there's ways to get participation through scrimmages. And I also want to show something at the end of this, right? Because there's going to be kind of a third section after what's good on what kind of changes we may be looking at in the future. Because I want to be very transparent about that and open discussion for it. But what's good about this league, I want to kick off with a couple thoughts for you. And we can kind of just go through them in a list or just ad lib it. But the very first thing that's been amazing about this league is the amount of hype and activity it's generated. The players that have come here after CPL ended were a little shocking, right? If you look at these rosters, these are players that are known, that are good, that are showing up in tournaments that you tune into on Saturday Twitch streams when you're bored. Um, and there's more coming, right? Like Dragon showed up. Art of Turtle is a name in the community. He's shown up. We've got who else showed up? Shoot, Hawk has been hanging out in the channels playing and potentially ready for next season. So there's definitely really strong players out there that can be picked up by these teams that may not have a strong first season to really set up going forward. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. The second thing I wanted to mention from like my list of three things is how seriously some of these teams are taking it. And I won't go too deep into like what team is doing what, right? But there's one particular instance of a team that has gone freaking moneyball with this shit. They've taken every single player, their players, who they think each one of their players would beat on the other people's teams, doing a simulation of a million like seasons and creating an entire Excel heat map of who should be paired against who to statistically potentially win. And it was bonkers to see that. There's been so much discussion of like, strategizing, and that's exactly what this league is meant to inspire. And then the third thing I wanted to bring up on what's good is the suggestions, right? People coming up on the net and taking part in the discussion of what's going on in the league and what should happen moving forward, whether it's the contracts that we're discussing, because team mobility is going to need to be a thing to prevent an overarching like dynasty team. We've had people talking about skill levels, like we've had people talking about participation, and so all these are being very vocalized and discussed, and it's really really awesome. So that's kind of my three things. Do you have anything about kind of good that the league's done?
well, first of all, I just want to say I love Moneyball. It's one of my favorite movies. So I think that's really cool. I don't know if there's enough of a sample size for all of the players to accurately simulate that, but I love it. I love it. Um, and yeah, honestly I didn't even consider um, the fact that as you go along, you know, like all the best players in this league are going to be telling their other good players, and also even if they don't, like if they don't tell their other good player friends about it, their other good player friends will just like notice organically that, like, oh look, my friend is playing this, now I want to play it, you know. So yeah, there's definitely going to be way more talent involved next season and the season after that, and that will only grow. um, so yeah, like even if say mixed team, my team wins this season, um, it's not like it's a foregone conclusion that we're going to be winning forever, right? Um, I think that's a really good point. And then once it becomes, you know, who knows? We just have to keep in mind, and I know obviously you know this, and I'm sure everyone else does too, but it's like this is just the first iteration of it, right? And leagues change over time. If rosters get bigger, then maybe we can start implementing like some sort of tier type thing like CPL has. So it eliminates that variance a little bit. Um, I don't know.
Yeah.
That
I mean, the
those are,
talent thing.
yeah. That
Go ahead. Sorry.
oh no. I was basically finished. Yeah,
Yeah. No, I think you're
that's
right.
awesome that Dragon and Hawk are getting more involved. Sorry.
Yeah, it's super cool. Like seeing these names, these skill levels, like that brings attention, and it also, um, will raise everyone around them, right? Like if you're in CPL and you're on these players' teams, like I was on the same team as Dragon. Dragon was always very active in answering questions when playoffs showed up. He was in like the chat, like, okay, practice now. I'll watch. Let's do this, and caring about the league, and that was just CPL. It's a coaching league, it's a learning league. I want to see these players actually competing over time and building these rivalries, these storylines where you may have Wolfix on Team Unhinged, and it's him versus Semi or whatever the case may be, or him versus Doodle, and they're facing off like in the finals, and it comes down to that last map when it's crazy. Um, that's kind of the fun that I'm looking at, and I think also to look at the good, and we're only like 3 days in, right? I can't stress that enough. But the format is looking okay, right? Like with aside from some of the friction that we were talking about earlier with complaints of participation opportunities and things like that, I think that the round robin is going to shake out pretty well. When we look at the finals bracket, I think the decider matches are going to add a very interesting component. And so far, I'm happy with the current format, but I wanted to sneak peek the concept for next season and what I'm thinking about and see what your thoughts are. So let me see if I can zoom this out a little bit. Holy crap. Okay, I'm going to have to zoom it out a lot for the screen to see. Okay, so if you take the round robin format and like not focused on the finals yet, just the round robin, I was trying to solve the problem of participation while still including strategy. So what I have here, and I'll try to do my best of showcasing it well enough on this screen. It's not doing a good job of mirroring my screen here. You know what? Actually, I might show it like this. Hold on. All right, yeah, let's just go full bore and show it like this. So what I'm going to show you is kind of the sneak peek thought of next season. So if you come in here, it's still 3 weeks of round robin, but the difference being is that every team is facing 2 teams at once. So Team Savage, for example, right here, 10 players will face Legion. Now, this player count would probably need to adjust. It'll depend on participation, right? Like how many players we have on a team. This is obviously too many players. Maybe it's 8, maybe it's 6. But 10 players will face Team Legion, and 10 players will face Team Chaos. And Legion, they're the one on the end, so it looks a little bit funky, will face Savage and also face Unhinged. Unhinged will face Chaos and Legion. Chaos will face Unhinged and Savage. And so when the players are picked, you need to consider, and the players are only able to face one of the other teams. They're only able to be used once. You need to pair them appropriately against one team while balancing who has the most map wins, right? So week one might just be get as many map wins as you can against whoever the opponents pair. Week two might be, okay, I'm Chaos team facing Unhinged and Legion. Legion is running away with the score. So I want to put my focus and my best players over here to steal map win opportunities from them, but then Unhinged might be able to take maps off them. So it's going to add this depth. And the way it's structured is every team will still face each other team the same amount of times. So that's the thought, to increase depth while maintaining team strategy. And I don't know if I did a good job of explaining it, but I think it might be the silver bullet to hit that complaint and also be a really interesting round robin format. Do you have any initial thoughts on it, if it made any sense? It's an enormous sheet, so it doesn't fit well on the screen.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a pretty good idea. It would force activity from every player. I feel like it might. I think that, I mean, there's always pros and cons of everything, right? I think it might
100%.
end up like alienating some players because they just can't play every week, and like for some of the best players, for example, they're probably going to be the most active and wanting to play every week. So that might be kind of a bummer if they can't play. But at the same time, if Doodle is getting matched up against Aaron every week, like you said, that might negatively affect his participation. Um,
But
yeah, I don't know. I think that's
something I didn't mention that is a little bit of a mitigation of that. So in this theoretical season 2 format, one of your sides you'd be a home team and one of your sides you'd be an away team. And what that would mean is like the away team would have to put a player first, and the home team would put a player second. So no matter what, on one of these sides, you'd be able to hold out until the end to place your doodles as that
hmm.
away team that you're facing is placing theirs
So
first.
it would no longer be a snake draft.
It would be a snake, but the thing is you'd have an advantage on one side and the disadvantage on the other. So there's always
Oh, I see.
a
Okay.
higher likelihood of an opportunity for you to place appropriately.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I like that. Um, yeah, I'd be interested. I think that would be a cool change, and I think that if you keep making changes like this every season and work out the kinks, I mean, I know I've been involved in tournament organizing before myself, and I know just how frustrating it can be with the cacophony of voices shouting at you from every direction
Oh yeah, it's
sometimes.
fun.
But I think people will be gracious, and I think people want to participate in it anyway. So if you keep making changes like this and try to work out the kinks, people will try to work with you as best as possible. And as long as you're showing a willingness to change instead of just being like stubborn and completely obstinate and not listening to anyone, I think it'll be really great.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So next up, and Mevius, to your point, not to get too deep on season 2 speculation stuff, but that format would require all team representatives to be there at the same time, because it would need to go all the way across one line at a time. So you couldn't like pick all your players, because then a team could just wait to the end and be that one team that picks after their other team that they're facing is picked. So it'll be a little bit interesting. Um, okay, cool. So we're 42 minutes in. I'm curious about your thoughts going forward in this week. Looking at these rosters and looking at what we have with Savage and Chaos, Unhinged and Legion, we're approaching the weekend. And obviously in SCU, most of the matches occur over the weekend. Friday night, Saturday night. is always a lot of fun to be in the Discord server because all the brackets are firing. Like everyone's getting all their games in, and I expect the same to occur with the Skull League, especially looking. We have what is this? One, two, three, 4 games. So less than half of the games between Savage and Chaos have been played, and then we have one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 of the 10 games over here between Chaos and Unhinged have been played. So we still have what was that, like 3 and 6 or something. So we still have like half the games essentially to be played. So what are you thinking? Are there any big matchups here? I know you mentioned yourself versus A-Rob is kind of up in the air. You also mentioned the Aussie versus Radley Young being one that's kind of hard to predict. Are there any others that are hard to predict that you think might be opportunities for a team to snag some map wins?
Yeah. So I have no idea. A lot of these players are unknown quantities for me. Vint versus Ronan. I feel like I people are saying that Ronan is like pretty good, but I think he's just some teenage kid who's still like C rank, and I think V rank is C rankish too. So I feel like that should be pretty equal. Um, I feel like Hazarath and Firetip. Uh, Also, I'm really not sure. Could go either way. I've played with Harry before, and I think he's pretty good. So I'm gonna give him the win there.
On the Harry Quail
Thrive
one?
versus Least. Yeah, I think Harry's gonna win that,
Harry's
but
Harry's been very strong for sure. Quail's strong too, but okay.
the other match, so I really don't know anything about Hacker J23 and Gabagoon. I'm going to play Hacker J23 for the first time later tonight. So, wish me luck. He could be crazy good.
Yeah.
Um, Nesh versus Semi. I feel like I would normally put Semi advantaged against Nesh, but like Semi has been pretty inactive lately, and I think Nesh has been pretty active. So again, it's just totally up in the air. I feel like so many of these matches are actually really hard to predict.
I know, and that's exactly, I think, an indicator of a strong first week. Not entirely sure. The matchups are pretty fair. The one thing that's interesting over here is all the 2-0s, right? Not as many 2-1s, which I think will compound over time too. So, looking at these, if some of these go that way, right? If like Vint goes 2-0, if you go 2-0, if maybe Radley goes 2-0, like the 2-0s are huge. That's one thing I've noticed in just looking at this, because the max points you can get for a week is 20 points, right? You can also get a maximum, right? Like if you lose every set and still get one map win, you can get 10. But in theory, you can also get 0. So from 0 to 20 with 3 weeks to work with is a huge swing, right? And so we've seen some parity over here, 6 to 8. They only have 3 games remaining. Let's say Semi, Semi and Nish have faced before. I think Semi is the favored in this matchup. Let's say he goes 2-0. That's 10-6. Gabagoon, Hacker J. I don't know. I don't know. I know Gabagoon's strong. But let's just say it's like Hacker J 2-1. Right. So now we're at 11 to 8. This one might end up pretty dang close. I think the Unhinged Legion matchup is going to end up pretty close looking at it. The Chaos
Yeah.
Savage one maybe a little bit more skewed. You were going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I could see it being like within a few games of each other, because yeah, even I think maybe the most imbalanced matchup, honestly, might be Semi versus Nash. But like I said, Semi has been very inactive, so even when they're both very active, it could still go either way. That's how close I think it is.
Yeah, for sure. And then let's say over on this side, right? Let's say Savage does really well. Vent, yourself, maybe pick up 4. Uh, let's say at least 1 for Ozzy, so like 5, 6. Vahens, J say I don't know. I don't know Vahens at all. Let's say Hazareth at least 1. So we're looking at like 6, Harry 7 at least, maybe 8. I think Savage, your team is going to end up with probably a minimum of 15 points. And I think that's going to set you guys up with a lot of momentum going into week 2. But do you think any one of these teams is the most scary for your team throughout these weeks? Like, is week 2 going to be the struggle against Unhinged? Is week 3 going to be a struggle against Legion? What's kind of your thought there?
I don't think any particular team will be very scary for our team.
You guys are the boogeyman.
Um, I think so. I think so. No offense to Unhinged, um, but our lineup. I looked at it. I looked over for our team signups this week, and honestly, that's why I mentioned like I feel like we should send out more of our lower level players this week because we have far more depth and um, the drafting isn't up to me, but I think we could get away with sending out some of our lesser MMR players and still take a win in
Earn
a
some of that
pretty
prestige
convincing
while
fashion.
also
Yeah.
getting the map wins. Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I think that's going to be about it for today. I know we kind of wung it. We talked about the things that were struggling. We talked about the things that were going pretty good. We sneak peeked a little bit about season 2 thoughts. I think the outlook is getting close. The Unhinged Legion matchup is the one most curious to me. I would say when it comes to lineups in this format, I think the Savage Chaos lineups might be the largest disparity if I were looking just player to player and lining them up myself. I think probably Savage got the strongest draft. So outside of people not being available or showing lack of interest because they're doing too well or something like that, and the same for Chaos, I think that Savage is definitely favored in this matchup. But I'm really curious to see going into round 2 and round 3 how the teams pick, how they strategize to bring your team down with what they have available, and I'm excited to see that. But any final thoughts from you as we finish up week 1 and go into week 2?
No, not really. I feel like I wish I had more to add. It's just so early in the season.
It's so
But
early.
yeah. Honestly, I hope I've been just really jazzed about getting onto this team. I'm excited because I feel like we have a crazy good roster. So I actually hope that someone knocks us down a peg. So it makes it more interesting overall.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to. And I was talking about that a little bit earlier, and it's been a big discussion kind of in the suggestion threads. So, in the draft for this league, right, in order to prevent dynasty teams, right, let's just say Savage is the strongest lineup. And let's say 2, 3 seasons in a row, you guys aren't just winning the championship, but you're winning it by a mile, right? Like that's a problem. I have less of a problem of like a team winning 2 or 3 seasons in a row by like a couple matches. Like their star player is really the one that's pulling them across the finish line. But if there's like sweeps going on all the way through the season, that's a problem, and that's too imbalanced. And so, in order to mitigate that, we do need some sort of team mobility. And when we talk about trades, there needs to be enough incentive for a good team to actually want to trade anyone, right? Because if you have that dominant roster, why change, right? It's not going to do anything for you. So there's a couple of things that I think would help, and one is contract terms. And we don't have this boiled down yet, and there's a huge discussion thread in the Discord about it. But generally, what I'm thinking is every player has some level of number of seasons that they are assigned to a team, and they would be different, and you would be capped to how many you could have. This is all initial speculation right now. It'll come out in between this season and next season is when that decision will be made, when the trade rules and everything start rolling out. But the kind of pencil on paper version of it is that like every team would be able to maintain 5 players that have a 3 season contract, right? Now, as the contract burns down, their contract type is still 3 season, right? So even if they only have 1 season left, they're still taking up one of those slots. And then you could have like 5 players that have like a 4 season contract. And then the rest are all 2 season contract. You can have unlimited number of those. And so that incentivizes trading a little bit. If you have a star player, but and you had them on a 4 season contract, they're down to 1 season, and then you get this dragon that shows up or this hawk that shows up in the draft pool, but all your slots are taken and you really want to maintain them, all of a sudden it's starting to look pretty like a good idea to trade, your doodle maybe or your wolfix for a couple of players that earn a bunch of SCU bucks in the SCU brackets and open up the opportunity to draft yourself a dragon or a hawk or whatever the case may be with players showing up. So that's kind of the general idea. What are your thoughts on team mobility, and is it important or is it more important to maintain who you've got for as long as possible?
Oh, gosh, I don't really know how to answer that, to be honest, right
It's
now.
tricky.
I, I think I think the contract idea is a good idea. Um, Again, it's a double-edged sword, right? No matter what, because like if if a player is really getting like meshed with the team and like teaching lower level players, practicing with everyone, and you develop a team culture where it's almost like a clan in Brood War Clan League or whatever, then it would kind of suck for them to have to be traded away at some point.
Yeah.
Um, but
But what sucks
yeah, I don't
more?
know.
Being traded away in the trade system without control, right? Like I feel like that'd be a feel bad, right? Me, the worst player in StarCraft Underground, right? I'm on a team. I'm having a blast. I've got a bunch of memes, right? Like I'm making a lot of jokes. I've made a bunch of friends, and then they come up to me. The team captain is just like, "Hey, we're trading you for someone else because we're improving the team roster." And I'm just like, well, that sucks, right? Like that's a feel bad. I don't even want to play. Like I'm just gonna go bounce and ladder and I don't know, pick up Dota or something. So that I want to avoid. The team contract aspect, whatever it may look like, would allow long-term strategy, but also predictability, which I think is important. That it's an evolution of the league over time and not a punishment for being bad, right? It affects good players just like it affects bad players. The contract's going to come up, you're going to go into the free agent pool, and you're going to be a portion of that next draft, and you could even be drafted by that same team again with no penalty. So I don't know, it's really
Sure.
tricky.
Yeah, and if you do eliminate the 75% rule, that will ameliorate that for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'll
Like I
keep
said, I
mulling on it.
just yeah, it's hard to predict. It's hard to predict any of this. And like I said, first of all, I don't think these like hugely in-depth team cultures, because the first season is going to be pretty. Uh, it's going to go by quickly. So like if teams change after the first season or second season, it's not going to be that big of a deal. It's going to be the long term that's really important. So I think tinkering with these things is just a good way to do things in general. I don't think anyone's going to get super upset. I mean, and you can always course correct immediately if some sort of catastrophic change is made.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I don't know.
let's go to the
I
extreme
think it's
example of that then, because you brought up two things. You brought up it is early. There's going to be change. Let's make it now. And then you also brought up the 75% thing. So a lot of the contract aspects, a lot of the economy aspects, and suggestions surrounding player duration on a team, a lot of it comes back to the economy. There's been thoughts of like, well, maybe every every season you have a player, you have to pay the SCU bank SCU bucks equal to their bid cost, right? So you can have these players for a long time, but they're going to cost you, right? So your better players are going to be more expensive, and then there's a balancing of the economy, etc., which is really cool and makes a lot of sense. The problem is that we have players that are wildly valued because of the strategy associated with the 75% rule. It almost forces you to underbid to get good players, overbid to get players that maybe aren't the best. So, what would your response be to if we did a complete redraft for season two?
um, I actually, first of all, I really like the idea of making teams pay for players every season, and I think that's totally valid, honestly, because the season is going to be so brief. Um, Escalade is already saying no full redraft.
Okay, yeah.
Uh,
First of all, don't
I
worry.
actually
That's
think
not
it
something
would be.
I'm considering right now.
I personally think it would be totally fine to have a full redraft in the second season. I think using this as a pilot test is totally understandable, and it's like a little over a month essentially, right?
Yeah,
So
quick seasons. I plan on
um,
having
it's
at max like 6 seasons a year, but I also want to deconflict with CPL, so probably 4 seasons a year.
yeah, and that would still give schools like 4 seasons before the next CPL essentially, because CPL basically only happens once a year. I think that I think a redraft in season two would be good
Interesting. I haven't voiced
with
that
a
yet.
completely new perspective. And yeah, I think that's a good solution actually.
Well, I'll keep thinking on it because the other solution, which I'm heavily considering, is because of the results of the first draft, we blanket cost people, right? I introduced a new sheet today. I was tinkering around, and there's a player stats tab now in the master school sheet, which everyone has a link to, right? Everyone can pull this up, and in it, we're going to start tracking the amount of SCU bucks that each individual player earns for their team, their prestige,
Hmm.
their player value, which is basically a value assigned based on their win percentage, participation, and a subjective improvement score that is either 0 for no improvement, 0.5 for some, and 1 for this dude, started grinding and got really, really good, like future talent.
Hmm.
And so, with these in mind, um, I think we can formulate something where we can change their current bid price to something applicable because to grandfather them in from that first draft, right? So like let's look at Abji, right? He's the top here. He's played one match. He's won. He's participated. Let's say he becomes more active. He improves. He's earned some prestige. He's in some SCU brackets. He earns some bucks. He's got a player value of 5. He's maxed out, right? So player value 5 individuals, we're going to give them a price of 50, right? Player value 4, we'll give a price of 30, or maybe it just goes down 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, right? Something simple like that. And then we adjust from there as people get traded and things like that. But just a thought. I think we could probably talk for hours on how team mobility, like you can go into that thread. It's insane. It's there, and the thing is all the suggestions are really good. There's suggestions that are leaning way more on the player, and that there's feedback that players feel like game pieces. That this is really a Brood War fantasy simulator, and the players don't really have any say, right? Which to some extent is probably true, right? Just like any
Is there
sports
anything
league.
that wrong with that though? Because
I don't
fantasy leagues are so
necessarily
fun.
think so, right? I think I mean, well, and also like look at normal sports teams, right? They pay players to go out there and pitch a ball fast, right? They don't care what you do, right? Just make sure you pitch that ball fast, or we're going to get someone else that can. And so a lot to think about, a lot to chew on. And if you're watching this either now or later on YouTube, or you heard about it from a friend, like get in the suggestion channels. I'm definitely listening to everything. I'm being very transparent with my thoughts and want to make this the best that it can be. And I think we got a lot of potential. I want to play some Brood War now. Keen, you said you got a game coming up?
Yeah, it's at 10 in a couple hours.
Very cool, very cool. Well, I think now we'll actually finish it. We're at the hour mark. 15 minutes ago, I said we'd close it out. But I could talk about this for hours. Like, honestly, it's become an addiction. Thinking about this league, how we can make it awesome, how it can be a good experience, but also really competitive, legacy, but not over imbalanced. And so I'm curious to everyone's thoughts. And thanks for doing this call. I think we'll keep doing this next week. I won't be able to. But this podcast format's kind of fun, and I know that different people play in this league for different things. But I know there's some people that like this aspect of it, the nerding out over it, and I really got a taste of that this past week with people. Some teams have assigned staff essentially, right? And I think it's your team actually,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
then
we have a co-admin. Vile Tomato is our co-admin.
yeah, exactly, right? And he's like co-adminning things. We've got analysts on other teams. We've got people practicing. So like the give a shit factor is there, and that's awesome but I don't think we're even close to 100% of what it can
Oh
be.
no. And I will say, first of all, not only is Moneyball one of my favorite movies, but I love fantasy leagues. So this stuff is right up my alley. And if there was a team that just like generated insane value from like middling talent without like star power, that would just make my day. So I think that's super
Really
cool.
tough in a 1v1 format, though. Like, really tough.
It
Like, this
is.
isn't a
It
game
is. Yeah.
with positions, right? Where you can, like, do that. Or
Yeah.
Moneyball, where you
It's
focus on
fucking it's
RBIs.
really hard.
Yeah, like, it's really tough, but it's not impossible. It just hasn't been done before. So we're kind of, you know, stretching and working muscles that haven't been existing in the Brood War community. Well, okay, so we can ramble on forever. I'm gonna go ahead and kill it. I'm gonna go ahead and find someone to raid. Thank you, Keen, for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And I also want to start getting some freaking like coach interviews and player interviews and stuff like that as we go along. As far as casting is concerned, I don't think we're going to get even a fraction of all these matches casted. But we're going to go ahead and rate Artosis. So I imagine many people watching this are probably already watching him. Right now, there's a AI generated goth chick AI image on his screen. So if we can get there in time, you guys might be blessed with that. Anyway, take it easy, y'all.